So if you're a passenger in the car, the driver has an accident, was distracted. Who pays for your injuries? Is it that driver's insurance, your own insurance, health insurance? How does that all work?
So sure, yeah. In Pennsylvania, let's presume it's a Pennsylvania automobile accident.
Okay.
The Pennsylvania law that applies there. Pennsylvania is a no-fault state. So if you have, essentially 3 potential levels of coverage, automobile insurance coverage come into play. The first is where we get the no-fault language in the Act. And that first level of coverage is called first-party benefits.
Okay.
It provides a minimum of $5,000 of medical benefits, or really just $5,000 of health insurance to pay for your accident-related injuries. It comes from your own insurance company. So if you're in a friend's car, but you own your own car and you insure it with an insurance company, the insurance on your vehicle, despite the fact you're in your friend's car,
Right.
is going to provide this first level of coverage. If for some reason you don't have your own car, or you don't live with a family that owns vehicles, you will get that coverage from the vehicle you're occupying.
Okay.
So the second level of coverage that comes into play is that liability. So if your friend was distracted and you let them get away with it, their liability coverage is going to apply. And it's going to pay for your injuries and damages, depending first upon what kind of policy you buy. So let me address something that's very important here. When you buy an automobile policy in Pennsylvania, you can select the full tort or limited tort options.
Right.
If you select limited tort, you get a 20% reduction in your premium. And that's very appealing to people.
Yeah.
In exchange for that 20% reduction in your premium, you give up your right to collect or claim an entire category of damages in any claim you make. So under Pennsylvania law, when you're injured, you have 2 basic categories of damages. You have economic loss and you have a non-economic loss. An economic loss is pretty easy to understand. It includes lost wages, unpaid medical bills, medical liens, things that are economic in nature we can calculate down to the penny.
Right.
Those non-economic damages that you would be prohibited from collecting if you were a limited tort claimant include everything like pain and suffering and scarring and disfigurement and loss of the enjoyment of life. So let's assume in the example we're discussing that the person is a full tort claimant. Okay, so they are not prohibited from making a full claim for their damages. You would make that full claim against a distracted driver if they were at fault for the accident. If their distraction caused the accident.
Okay.
I could be a distracted driver. I could be sitting at a red light, waiting for the red light to change, looking at my phone, and get rear-ended. Well, I was distracted, but that distraction didn't cause the accident.
Right.
That's very different than I'm driving down the highway, I get a text, I go to respond to it.
Right.
When I look back up, traffic is stopped and I'm plowing into a line of traffic.
Yeah.
So if the person is at fault, you collect against their liability coverage. And under Pennsylvania law, unfortunately, and this has been true since the 1990s, there's a state minimum policy of what's called a 1530 policy. That is that there's no more than $15,000 per person in the accident and no more than $30,000 in the aggregate. So if there was 5 people in the car, all injured by this distracted driver, all 5 of them would be entitled to recover no more than $30,000, and not one of them could recover more than 15 individually.
Wow.
It's a woefully inadequate coverage.
Wow.
The plaintiffs' bar is working hard in state legislature to try to increase that to get with the times. I mean, when the auto law was passed, this was the state minimum, and that's over 30, almost 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
So then we get to the third level of coverage, which is essentially uninsured, underinsured. This coverage, again, comes from your own policy.
Okay.
Coverage you buy to protect you in the event that the person who is at fault has one of these state minimum policies or has a policy that is inadequate to cover your damages. It's called underinsured coverage. And it's also uninsured coverage in the event, God forbid, that the person who's at fault doesn't have any insurance at all. That level of coverage is elective, and it's important to note that it's very inexpensive. You should have it because it guards you against these people driving around with woefully inadequate state minimum policies. There's very few claims that I see that end up in a litigation or a claim that are worth less than $15,000.
Yeah.
So those are the coverages that come into play. If you're a passenger in a vehicle that's involved in an accident caused by a distracted driver.
Yeah.
Let me make one more point.
Sure.
Continue, Cindy. You know, it's important to remember in this limited tort, full tort selection, it's very appealing to get a 20% reduction in your premium. You know, most people are working for every penny they get, and every penny counts. And so getting a reduction is important, but it's also important to keep in mind that if you own a vehicle registered in Pennsylvania that's uninsured, the state punishes you. Let me repeat that, punishes you by making you a limited tort claimant. So that 20% reduction in the premium is really a swap out for a punishment.